Okay, so I wanted to do a video, and this is kind of a response video to Rick Beato's video from last week about the Yacht Rock documentary. Um, I'm going to say before I get into my thoughts on things that I am a huge fan of Rick and his page. I think he does wonderful things as far as teaching people about music and interviews the best, all the best players and the session people, and let's just say I've seen a lot of his videos that I just really like. So, Yacht Rock. um, Honestly, guys, this is a term I've heard recently. And when I say recent, kind of old fashioned, but when I say recently, I want to say I've probably heard this term in the last 5 to 10 years. Apparently, it was started on some kind of skit on some show or something, and it describes the softer sound music, adult contemporary stuff from the late 70s into the early 80s, like the Christopher Cross, Kenny Loggins, Robbie Dupree, that kind of stuff. Um, I'm not a big fan of terms and lumping things into categories. I've done videos before about generations and how I do not agree with the Pew Research Center's birth years on generations. I believe Strauss and Howell got it right. Um, so in this particular case, I can kind of see where Rick is going with the term yacht rock. It is kind of offensive. When you think of this music, and I think of boats and beaches and stuff, I think of the Beach Boys or maybe like Jan and Dean, that kind of stuff. I don't think of Steely Dan. Um, and I'm a blue collar working stiff guy. I like this kind of music because it was all over the radio when I was a kid. And then in 1991, when grunge came out, I knew I wasn't going to like that stuff, so I started going back to the stuff I heard on the radio when I was young. So I went to Steely Dan, was actually one of the first bands I started listening to right away, and that music sounds, it sounds better every time you hear it than it did the last time. If that makes any sense to you guys. Um, so anyway, I actually liked the documentary. I upgraded my TV package just so I could have the Max, so I could actually watch this and see what it was about. Um, a lot of those songs that are discussed and those artists, a lot of their songs go well together on the radio. Now, obviously, with the Doobie Brothers, you had the earlier years where Tommy Johnson sang, and then you had the later years with McDonald. Obviously, the McDonald years are going to fit more into this category. Um, and like I said, Robbie Dupree, the list goes on and on. Kenny Loggins, Christopher Cross, you name it. Um, then I hear a band like Toto, one of my favorite bands of all time. Um, I don't really think Hold the Line would be a soft rock song. That's a rock song. Um, I don't know. um, I think, bottom line, I think the title itself is kind of cheesy, but they interviewed some really great people from that era that were involved in making a lot of that music that seems to get lumped into this specific category. Um, so they got that part right. I think they just need to understand that some of the artists actually that were in that documentary, and then they call Donald Fagen at the end, and he basically tells the guy to go f himself and hangs the phone up in his ear. Um, you know, when you think of Steely Dan, they put a lot of money and a lot of work into making their music sound really good. Um, Again, as I said earlier, every time I listen to a Steely Dan record, it sounds better than it did the last time I listened to it. And and maybe the interviewer might have said to Donald Fagen when he called him, "Hey, what what would you classify your music as?" Because they have jazz. The earlier years they had rock with Jeff Skunk Baxter playing the guitars. Um, the later years they upped the production a little bit, and you got that wonderfully produced stuff. Royal Scam, Asia, those albums, phenomenal albums, very well produced. Um, Excuse me, been a long day, but I would almost say at this point a person should ask Donald Fagen what particular genre he would like to classify their music as, and give him that respect. Um, because that group is so effing good. Um, you know, that guy deserves the respect. Walter Becker's not around anymore. He passed away, but Donald Fagen's still here. That man, we owe that man that respect. Um, so a lot of good faces in there. It was good to see Lukather on there, one of my favorite guitar players of all time. Um, Jay Graydon on there. I believe Larry Carlton was mentioned. Um, Phenomenal guitar players. I saw Al Jarreau's picture on there a couple times. Brenda Russell's on there. Uh, it is it's a nice documentary. It kind of tells a story, and then later on when you start to get into the days of rap, when rap starts to kind of take hold and become the powerhouse, you have rappers sampling Michael McDonald tracks and so on and so forth. A lot of those artists did not like MTV videos, making videos for MTV. Um, that's basically a synopsis of what this documentary is about. Um, it's a good watch. I would recommend taking a look at it. Um, Again, but there are going to be artists that they put their heart and soul into this stuff, and they work really really hard to make their records sound as best as they can. And as Lukather mentions all the time, that having that arranger's ear, um, and they worked so hard to make their music sound as good as they could. Jeff Porcaro, obviously, the whole Porcaro family, David Paich, you talk about Toto. It's not just Lukather; it's those guys too. Um, David Hungate, their bass player. A lot of original bass player. A lot went into making those records sound really good. And if they don't like the term, let's respect them on it. I mean, that music, and back to Steely Dan, their music, it has elements of jazz, funk, R&B, rock. You get a little bit of everything there. You can't really just lump it into one specific category like that. And I think that's kind of what ticked Donald Fagen off a little bit. And they don't like that term. That term really bothers them. And again, when I think of boats, I think of the Beach Boys. I think of that stuff from the '60s. What was that song? Wipeout. Do 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 do. Everybody knows that song. But Jan and Dean, the Beach Boys, that kind of stuff. I don't really think of this. But again, it's kind of weird because a lot of these songs do play well together in a playlist on a radio station. So at the end of the day, I mean, there's going to be a lot of mixed opinions on here. I know there was one guy on there saying, "Oh, well, my 80-year-old mother doesn't care who Larry Carlton is." Well, that's her loss. Larry Carlton's a phenomenal guitar player. Um, you know, all those guys. Jay Graydon, phenomenal guitar player and producer. Bill Champlin was involved with a lot of that West Coast music. Um, you know, anybody that that could make a just a statement like that, really not a not a big listener, not a terribly big fan. I think music's just more like noise in the background for them at an event. Um, just my opinion. I could be right. I could be wrong in some cases, but you know, I've enjoyed the last 30 years of my life since grunge came out when I really got into this style of music. That was discussed in this documentary. I mean, like I said, I'd always heard it on the radio as a kid, but I really took a liking to it in the early 90s, and just collection's been growing and growing with it. And I like knowing, who's playing the guitar on that song, who played that killer solo, Christopher Cross, that killer solo at the end of Ride Like the Wind, you know? Yeah. A, what was it? A 24 track machines. They had two 24 tracks linked, 24 track machines linked when they were doing sailing. And they went in, I guess they went in to do mixing or whatever. The one machine fired and the other one didn't. And that's why you got that beautiful string arrangement at the beginning of Sailing. It was like Christopher Cross talked about that when Rick interviewed him. And this music is phenomenal. And stuff like that happens, and a lot of good production, Michael and Marty, and again, Jay Graydon's production, and all the bands that produce themselves. Recording engineers like Al Schmidt, people like Tom Knox, Greg Ladani, all the people that were around that were involved in the creating of this music deserve respect and appreciation as fans. So again, like I said, there's going to be a lot of mixed reviews out there. My feelings are, I'm not a big fan of the term yacht rock, but I know that I love this music, and until I take my last breath of air and God tells me it's time to go, I'm going to enjoy this music. Anyway, guys, we're at 13 minutes. That's my thoughts on this Yacht Rock documentary. It's a good watch. If you got time, got an hour and a half, sit down and watch it. It's pretty cool. I don't like I said, I don't like the term either. And let's respect these guys. So anyway, that's it for this video. Y'all have a goody, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.